was pretty boring and uneventful with no major
Yeah,
threats.
why is he is he teabagging him, bro? Bro, imagine your ass got cut up and a dude right here just shaking his ass, your head hitting you with the... Yeah, you like that? Take these squats all over your head. Yeah, squatting your body, you're bleeding out and you can't do shit. Yeah, take these squats. Take these squats. I said take these squats! Take these squats! Most epic deaths in history.
Number 1, Benkei. We're starting this video off with a story of the greatest wingman in human history. It's a dark night in 12th century Japan, and a Buddhist monk named Benkei is wandering the streets of Kyoto. With an abundance of temples dotting the city, monks are a common sight, but this guy is different. At 6'6", he towers over everyone around him, and he's carrying a weapon. A cross between a sword and a long spear called a naginata. His face gives off the vibes of someone on a hunt more than someone seeking enlightenment.
My boy like he's an assassin. My boy looking like he's from Assassin's Creed 3. Jody, you get the HUDs? Of course. He looking playing Assassin's Creed Shadows.
He was out hunting that night for his final victim. See, Benkei was actually a Sohei, a warrior monk trained and battle-hardened in combat. Through his encounters with samurai, he's decided that they were an arrogant class, unworthy of their status in society. The world would be a better place with less of them around, and this led him on a bloody quest to duel and defeat 1,000 samurai, collecting their blades as trophies after each victory. At this point, he had collected 999 swords, and was out that night looking for his final...
Actually, ain't this dude in One Piece? I just thought about it, bro. This dude is in One Piece. He turned to a fox in One Piece, and he was trying to collect the sword because Zoro had Shunsui. He had this baby right here, actually. You know, Zoro had this sword right here in Wano, and you know he was in, and you know he had to get that Emma. So Hiyori traded him Emma in order to get Shunsui back. Yeah, I remember that. That dude's in One Piece. That's crazy.
While walking near Goto Tenjin Shrine, Benkei hears the sound of a flute, and when looking to see who was
literally
playing
in One
it, he
Piece.
finds a small, thin samurai. Around the man's waist is a beautiful gilded katana, the perfect piece to finalize Benkei's sword collection. He immediately challenges this samurai to a duel. The small man puts away his flute, and surprisingly, he agrees to fight. The two men walk together to Gojo Bridge and draw their weapons.
I have the cutscene move.
Full of confidence, Benkei rushes in, but despite towering over the samurai, Benkei is swiftly defeated.
Oh, this dude cold. This dude cold, bro. This is Samurai Jack, bro. I know this dude is Samurai Jack.
Instead of taking his life, the samurai just turns and walks away. Benkei is shocked and left in disbelief. In the following days, these unfamiliar feelings turn to anger and frustration. How could he lose to this tiny samurai? He had defeated much larger men in the past. He decides to stalk the grounds of Kiyomizu-dera Temple, waiting for the samurai to appear so he could take his revenge. Eventually, the samurai does show up, and Benkei immediately challenges him to another duel, a fight that Benkei loses again.
Damn!
Humiliated, he bows in defeat and tells this samurai
this dude goated, bro. This dude goated.
that he'll abandon his life as a monk and instead follow him as one of his retainers.
Yo, what up, Cash?
Who turns out to be Minamoto no Yoshitsune of the legendary Minamoto clan, agrees. Benkei
I'll show you after this video.
joins him on his adventures.
Alpha Samurai so whoa, Alpha Samurai is peak. Alpha Samurai is peak, bro. But I don't know, bro. This dude might got nothing Alpha, bro. Do you see the side of that dude, bro?
And the two become inseparable. They go on to join Yoshitsune's half-brothers and fight in the Genpei War against the powerful Taira, a clan that had killed Yoshitsune's father when he was just a baby. After 5 years of fighting, the Minamoto clan emerges victorious, and one of Yoshitsune's half-brothers, Yoritomo, becomes shogun. The end of the Genpei War had an unintended consequence. Without a common enemy, jealousy and suspicion soon turn the brothers against each other, and Yoshitsune and Benkei find themselves on the run, being pursued by Yoritomo and his men. They eventually find protection under another clan called the Fujiwara.
This is literally Assassin's Creed Shadows. Where my boy Yasuke at, bro?
Pair spend a few years in relative peace in their domain. This ultimately did not last, as with a lot of pressure and probably a lot of bribes, Yoritomo finally convinces the Fujiwara to turn on his brother. Fujiwara no Hidehira, the man who was once their protector, betrays them.
You're
and
OG,
on June
son.
15th, 1189, at the Battle of Koromogawa,
1189. Gosh damn, Unc. God damn, Unc. Gosh damn, Unc. 1189 is crazy, gang. You know how long ago that was, bro? In 1189, I was still out here trying to wonder what booty even was. I didn't even know the concept of booty in 1189. What is booty? Like, what was that, bro?
Yoshitsune and Benkei find themselves trapped and outnumbered 5-1, with 500 of Fujiwara's men surrounding their castle position. The forces clash, and Yoshitsune's men put up a heroic effort. Benkei in particular is a demon on the battlefield, crushing enemies who are on average more than a foot shorter than him. But despite their best efforts, Yoshitsune's men quickly begin to fall. With just a handful of retainers remaining, Yoshitsune realizes the battle is already lost. He turns to Benkei and tells him he plans to commit seppuku within the castle. He'll need time to prepare, and Benkei understands the assignment. He walks to the bridge that serves as the only entrance to the castle and stands alone against Fujiwara's army. Fujiwara signals a charge, and wave after wave of his men charge Benkei. He cuts them down one after another.
Yo, Benkei is really like that, bro. This dude Benkei is built different.
No man can make it past him.
Oh my
In
goodness.
some stories, he's said to have single-handedly slain 300 soldiers on that bridge.
Benkei is crazy.
Benkei stands stoically behind a pile of deceased Fujiwara warriors, beckoning more men to cross. And despite orders to do so, none of the Fujiwara's men answer.
Bro, Benkei got aura. Benkei got aura game. But I'm not gonna lie, if I would have packed that man Benkei up, if that was me, I would have packed that man Benkei up like a...
his call. They all know that stepping on the bridge was a death sentence. Fujiwara, realizing his men are now too afraid to attack Benkei head-on, calls in his archers. They'll take him out from a distance instead. The archers let loose a barrage of arrows that find their mark in Benkei's chest, but nothing happens. Benkei doesn't flinch. They let loose another volley of arrows, but still nothing changes. Benkei's body is now a pincushion of arrows, but is still standing defiantly in their way. Time passes, and both sides stare at each other across the bridge. Nobody dares to make the first move. Finally, Fujiwara orders some of his men onto the bridge, and they reluctantly do as they're told. As they slowly approach Benkei, he makes no motion to ready himself. They creep closer, and when they fight...
My boy Benkei got arrows in him, bro, and he's still fighting, bro. My boy Benkei got that dog in him, bro. I know Benkei, every time he talks, bro, he got the dog in him going, oh, like that, man.
Finally reach the massive monk, they discover that while he was still standing, he was already dead.
What?
Benkei, knowing he needed to buy as much time for his master as possible, had positioned himself to be supported by his spear even if he was no longer alive.
Wow.
In his last stand, he showed no pain or emotion while being hit with countless arrows, all to give the illusion that he was ready to fight anyone who dared to cross. Because of his final action,
not gonna lie, I think Benkei might solo the US, bro. We need Benkei, bro. We need Benkei 2025.
Yoshitsune had enough time to commit the seppuku ritual properly, maintaining his honor.
What? He did all of that to do seppuku? What? He did all that to pack his ass up? He did all that to pack himself up? Hell no! Why'd you go? Why'd he want to go? You hurt my servant Benkei, and now I'll take your life. Secret art. Bunkai.
A wingman. Number 2, Yi Sun-shin. The end of the 16th century in Korea was a strange mix of insane political corruption and relative peace for its people. Korea was a loyal tribute state to China, and the Ming dynasty pretty much left them alone. To the east, the Japanese were busy killing each other in the Sengoku Jidai, so they weren't a problem either. Aside from those pesky Jurchens who were constantly invading from the north, the rest of Korea was pretty boring and uneventful with no major threats.
Why is he teabagging him, bro? Bro, imagine your ass got cut up and a dude right here just shaking his ass, your head hitting you with the... Yeah, you like that? Take these squats all over your head. You have squat on your body and you're bleeding out and you can't do shit. Yeah, take these squats. Take these squats. I said take these squats! Take these squats!
Today, we're going over the most epic deaths in human history. Number 1, Benkei.
What?
We're starting this video off with light orders to do so, none of. Number 2, to each other constantly. The boring, as it was planned, the way Korea was pretty there. Aside from those pesky Jurchens who were constantly invading from the north, the rest of Korea was pretty boring and uneventful with no major threats. The boring, no wars way of life led to many men choosing to pursue careers as scholars and government officials, as it was now the best way to gain power and influence. This led to a bloated and corrupt political class and an extremely weak military led by generals who had never seen real combat.
Why are you playing with his meat? What the hell?
This combination of governmental corruption and a weak military would end up causing all kinds of problems in 1590 when Hideyoshi Toyotomi fulfilled the dreams of his former lord Oda Nobunaga and reunified Japan, bringing an end to the Sengoku Jidai. The Japanese, for the first time in over 100 years, were not at war with each other. And if they weren't busy fighting each other, who are they going to fight now?
These nuts.
Oh.
China.
Hey, before you brutally invade Korea and stuff, can I ask you, how many spam emails or texts do you get a day?
Damn.
Mind assign increase their burst pretending to be marked. They're
go.
selling your information to additional info to marketers, or even scammers pretending to be marketers so they have a direct way to contact you. Your
Love
name,
apples.
address, phone number, even your social security number is just floating out there online. But luckily, there's a way to fight back against these baka data dealers, because they're required by law to delete your info if you ask them to. That's where Incogni comes in. Like it,
Don't hit me
just
with
so
the
if you
sponsor, bro.
can get messengers to Korea now. Off an annual. Toyotomi begins sending messengers to Korea, saying that he was planning to conquer China and that he expects the Koreans
Whoever's
to help
next got
him
this
or
long
else.
ass part.
Now, remember, Korea was basically like the Puerto Rico of China in this era, so they couldn't really help Japan conquer it. Not like they wanted to, anyway. They thought the Japanese were primitive barbarians.
You shit not
Plus,
that good.
those
You ain't
idiots
gonna
don't even know how to
them.
sail anyway, right? Ha. Oh.
Okay.
In 1592, hundreds of Japanese ships are spotted off the coast of Busan. This is no trading expedition, this is an invasion. Seeing the massive Japanese fleet, two of Korea's top admirals freak out and sink their own ships so they won't
Bro, sinking your own ship is insane, gang. Bro sunk their own ship so they didn't have the smoke. That's crazy.
have to fight the Japanese. And just like that, half of Korea's naval fleet is gone. The Japanese soldiers land in Busan unopposed and immediately begin conquering forts and cities on their march to Seoul. The Korean military is no match for Toyotomi's men, who are all veterans of a 100-year war. Korean casualties are huge. The Japanese are ruthless and leave few survivors. Within 3 weeks, they've marched to and conquered Seoul. A few weeks later, they take Pyongyang and are at China's doorstep. The fall of Korea seems inevitable. But when all hope seemed lost, a man determined to defend his homeland and drive out these barbarian invaders rose to the occasion. A man who quite possibly was the greatest admiral to ever live. His name was Yi Sun-shin. So Yi Sun-shin's story is pretty interesting because unlike most heroes, he wasn't necessarily liked by the elites at the time. In fact, they kind of hated him.
Yi Sun-shin look like he's a crash out, bro. Bro, like an orc, bro. Why you looking like that? You know, they call me Yi Sun-shin, you know what I'm saying? I'm Yi Sun-shin. That what low-key look like, bro.
All the wrong reasons. Basically, early in his military career, he was so good at inspiring his men and leading them to victory that he made everyone around him look bad by comparison.
Why is he grinding on a floor?
Remember, corruption was a big problem during this time. So out of jealousy, a general falsely accuses Yi of deserting the army in battle, and the king believes it. He strips Yi of his rank, has him thrown in prison and tortured.
Why you? I know you're torturing him, but why like he's giving him brutal back shocks? What?
This experience would probably make most men quit the military altogether. But Yi was eventually released, and he managed to climb his way back through the ranks to commanding a small fleet of ships by the start of the Japanese invasion. Now, despite the fact the Koreans were absolute trash at fighting at the start of this war, they did have one huge advantage over the Japanese. They'd been dealing with Woko pirates along the coast for years, and because of this, they had developed ships called Panoksun, and later the turtle ship that were specifically designed to combat Japanese naval tactics. See, the Japanese weren't used to fighting at sea, so they basically stuck to what they were good at, close-range combat.
Yeah, because only got swords and stuff, right?
Their strategy consisted of shooting at people with their rifles and boarding other ships, and engaging them with swords and spears. Their ships were more like transport vessels rather than battleships. But Panoksun, on the other hand, was a floating fortress armed with cannons and was built in a way that made boardings impossible. These ships were a huge reason why Admiral Yi was able to have so much of his success, and are basically the only advantage the Koreans have.
So they basically cheated because they had this OP-ass ships, huh? They had an OP-ass ship. John, look at the Discord. Okay. No, John did it for 600 seconds. Bro, why are you crying? What did I do unfair to Bertha? What did I do unfair? Watch this, bro. Just for you to stop crying, bro, you keep asking me for roles, bro. There, bro. You spammed. Dude, he literally spammed. Like, bro, in my chat, on my Discord server. I'm gonna go play Roblox? Yeah, I'm gonna play Roblox a bit. All right, back to my video though.
And they already sank over half of them themselves. Anyways, Admiral Yi was not a coward like the other two admirals.
Okay.
And instead of sinking his ships, he rushed his fleet of 34 ships headfirst towards the Japanese and began attacking them along the coast. His capabilities as a naval commander are obvious right from the start. In just a few weeks, using tactics to bait the Japanese to sail into vulnerable positions, he single-handedly sinks over 200 Japanese ships with
Oh my gosh. So my man out here really cook all these Japanese ships with a ship advantage, bro. This ship must be the most OP ship of all time, bro. Most OP ships of all time. I've never seen a ship this strong, bro.
no losses of his own. In battle after battle, he is vastly outnumbered, yet sails away victorious every single time. Yi is the sparkling piece of glitter embedded in the turd that is the Korean military. And by the end of the year, he had sunk 350 Japanese ships. Yi's efforts.
So my boy out here really cooking. That's a Joseon? Oh, that's a Joseon. Who the hell is Joseon, bro? But yeah, man, my man Yi's OP, bro. He cheating though. Like, it's not really, Yi ain't like a dog like Ben-K was though. Cause Ben-K was really a dog game, bro.
Along with the help of Chinese reinforcements, allowed the Koreans to drive the Japanese soldiers all the way back to Busan. And by the end of the year, the war entered somewhat of a stalemate, with the Chinese and Japanese trying to negotiate a peace deal. So things are going pretty good for Yi. But remember the two admirals who sunk their own ships at the beginning of the war? Well, one of them, named Won Gyeon, is insanely jealous of Yi's success. So jealous, he starts talking shit about Yi to the king every day. And when peace talks with China fail and Toyotomi begins a second invasion of Korea in 1597, Gyeon and other government officials frame Admiral Yi as a traitor, and the king agrees. For the second time in his
How they really made my boy as a traitor, but why did my boy Yi like that? My boy Yi was carrying y'all.
Career, Yi is stripped of his rank and sent back to prison where he is brutally tortured again. He's set to be executed, but the king has a change of heart, and he instead sends Yi back to fight as a common soldier. A humiliation worse than death. With Yi out of the picture, Won Gyeon is put in charge of the Korean fleet. And as you may have guessed by now, he was pretty terrible at his job. He drank heavily, made poor decisions, and disrespected his men. Many of Yi's commanders refused.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie, bro. Then my boy Yi dirty, bro. Yi was cooking for y'all. I hope y'all lose this war now.
Yi dirty, bro. Under such a downgrade. And what made things even worse for Gyeon was that during the stalemate, the Japanese who had watched Admiral Yi wreck their ship over and over again had actually learned how to fight at sea.
Yes, that is my mother.
Their new ships now had cannons, and they began to use the same strategies Admiral Yi had used against them. This all comes to a head in the Battle of Chilcheoliang, Gyeon's first attempt to attack the Japanese fleet. With 200 ships and the best of Admiral Yi's men, Gyeon sails out to confront the Japanese, and he immediately falls into a trap. A trap they had learned from fighting against Yi. The entire Korean Navy is decimated, and Gyeon is last seen being chopped to bits by Japanese soldiers while trying to run away. The king, realizing he may have messed up, reinstates Yi Sun-shin as fleet admiral, and he takes command of the pathetic remains of the once undefeated Korean Navy. He's left with just 13 ships and a few hundred demoralized men. In the following battle, outnumbered 25-1, using superior strategy, Yi manages to sink 31 of the 333 Japanese ships.
So this man Yi has him on his back, bro. Yi is the LeBron James of Korea, bro. He has everybody on his back.
Again, without losing a single ship of his own. This victory gives Yi time to rebuild his navy, but not gonna lie, things still look pretty grim for the Koreans. But the next year, Hideyoshi Toyotomi becomes ill and dies. His last official order being to withdraw the Japanese army from Korea back to Japan. Yi sees this as the time to finally drive the Japanese out of Korea for good and mounts a final offensive against the retreating Japanese forces. At the decisive Battle of Noryang, Yi takes his position at the top of his flagship with his son and nephew and begins beating a war drum to push his allied Korean and Chinese fleet forward. Admiral Yi's ship leads the charge, and he personally takes out 10 Japanese ships. The Japanese are in full retreat, and Yi beats his drum with intensity. Victory is within his grasp. After 7 long years, Korea will finally be free of these invaders. But suddenly, he's hit in his armpit by a Japanese musket ball. He realizes the wound is fatal, and he turns to his son and nephew and says, The war is at its height. Wear my armor and beat my war drums. Do not.
Whoa. Beat your war drums. Like you're trying to tell bro to beat your meat, bro. You shouldn't. Whoa, pause. Pause on that, man. Pause on that, Yi.
Announce my death. His son and nephew quickly carry his body below deck, and his nephew, dressed in Yi's armor, quickly returns to the admiral's position and resumes beating the drum.
Okay.
Yi's men continue to fight, and the Koreans drive the Japanese out of Korea for good. Undefeated in battle, Yi dies below deck, listening to the sound of his drum, knowing that his homeland was finally free. Number 3, Ben El Salomon. So we generally cover stories from more ancient times on this channel, but this story from World War II undeniably belongs on this list. This is the last stand of a dentist turned field medic who took out 98 Japanese soldiers before falling to his own wounds. Ben El Salomon.
That dentist must have been crashing out. He wanted to mess around people's mouth or something.
Salomon was drafted into the United States Army in 1940, just 3 years after he graduated from the USC Dental School. Salomon proved to be a model soldier and showed himself to be very skilled with both rifle and pistol. He was quickly promoted, first to lieutenant and then to captain in 1944, serving as a regimental dental officer of the 105th Infantry Regiment. In June of 1944, Salomon and the 105th were deployed into active combat in Saipan. The fighting in the Pacific was infamously bloody. Casualties on the island were extremely high, and with so many soldiers having much more pressing issues than a root canal, Salomon volunteered to replace the 2nd Battalion's field surgeon who had been wounded. By July, both the Americans and the Japanese had suffered heavy casualties, and the remaining Japanese troops on the island came to the realization that there was no path to victory. They decided on a final banzai charge, a mission with the sole goal of killing as many American soldiers as possible with no plan of returning. Early in the morning of July 7th, 1944, the remaining 4,000 Japanese soldiers began their final attack. Salomon's field tent was positioned just 50 yards behind the front foxholes, and within minutes, his tent quickly filled with
Why did I miss Salomon the Orc Thief, though?
30 injured troops. He did his best to tend to the wounded, but the Japanese soon broke through the front lines. He looked out of his tent and spotted a Japanese soldier bayoneting a wounded American who was lying outside of the tent. Enraged, Salomon picked up the rifle of one of his patients and fired at the Japanese soldier, killing him. Suddenly, 2 more Japanese soldiers popped into Salomon's tent and he fired on them, taking them out as well. Like zombies, 4 more enemy soldiers then crawled into the tent from the sides, and Salomon took 2 out with his rifle and another with his bayonet. He hit the 4th soldier in the stomach with the butt of his gun, and a wounded soldier he had been treating finished him off. Realizing the situation was only getting worse, Salomon instructed his medics to evacuate all of the wounded men. He would stay behind to give them cover so they could retreat. Salomon grabbed a rifle and joined the front lines. When he saw 4 men manning a machine gun fall to enemy fire, he rushed to the gun and manned it himself, firing bursts into the charging Japanese soldiers. He continued to fight from that position until he was eventually overrun by enemy soldiers. Days later, when the Americans returned to the battlefield, Salomon's body was found slumped over the machine gun, with 98 dead Japanese soldiers piled in front of him. His body was ravaged with 76 bullet holes and many bayonet wounds, 24 of which he may have suffered before actually dying. The blood trail on the ground showed that Salomon had repositioned the machine gun multiple times while mortally wounded. Despite saving many lives that day, Salomon was denied the Medal of Honor due to a rule in the Geneva Convention that no medical officer can bear arms against an enemy. Despite multiple recommendations from generals throughout the years, he remained a footnote in history until 2002, when Salomon was finally posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor from President George W. Bush, 58 years later.
W. Salomon! W. Salomon, what a good